Talking.
This is 12:33 ABC Newcastle.
5:07. Could your local public school be on the verge of big change? The federal and New South Wales governments have signed a new 10-year funding deal for public schools. It provides an additional $4.8 billion over those 10 years. Here's the state's Education Minister, Prue Carr, speaking with Paul Culliver on the Breakfast program.
People might remember more than a decade ago, Gonski wrote a report saying that no matter where your child goes to school, they should have full and fair funding. This finally achieves that. It's going to go towards real reforms that we're already rolling out in New South Wales, but this means that we can do it everywhere. Real reforms that will make sure that we prepare our children for the rest of their lives.
What changes as a result of this funding flowing?
Things like a phonics check, a numeracy check, small group tutoring, high quality evidence-based teaching practice, stuff that we're doing, early intervention, we'll be able to roll that out everywhere. It basically means that every child in every school will have a chance to access the absolute best of public education. And it's something that, there's lots of teachers I know that would be listening, and something that they've been calling on for decades pretty much.
What does this mean for teachers that I suppose already are in the system, but also in terms of trying to attract teachers to this industry?
There will be reforms in the agreement that will go directly to teacher recruitment and retention, high quality professional learning, specifically as we roll out a new curriculum. That's all designed to support teachers, give teachers the professional development and the time to be able to focus on what we really want them to do and need them to do, and that's the expert practice in the classroom.
The fully funding of public schools won't be achieved until 2034. Why that horizon?
Well, we're talking about a lot of money from the Commonwealth Government. $4.8 billion is going to be rolled out during that period. At the same time, the New South Wales government will continue to lift public education funding as well. So that's over the decade, the life of the agreement. The other thing is too that we want to be able to realise these reforms over the next 10 years so we can really get time for them to work, so we can show that they have worked because they're based on evidence over the life of the agreement.
That's the state's Education Minister, Prue Carr, speaking with Paul Culliver on 12:33 Breakfast this morning. This agreement has the support of teachers and the unions, but will this play out as we expect? Dr. David Roy is with the School of Education at the University of Newcastle and has been taking a look at the plan. Good afternoon, Dr. Roy.
Good afternoon, Jen. Great to speak to you.
Thank you. In your view, is this the game changer that these governments expect it to be?
I would never call it a game changer. I think it's good news. It's a long time coming, more than a decade since Gonski was first presented and then kind of watered down. So in some ways, it's about time we started to do this. I will always be pleased when I hear more money going to the education of kids, whether it be in public schools or anywhere. There is some devil in the detail I find interesting, and there's a little bit of political speak about it. But overall, it's a good thing when we're giving more money to schools.
Right. What are some of the details that you're interested to learn a bit more about then?
Well, little phrases such as evidence-based practice, which I find challenging because what evidence? Education is part of the social sciences, and you can kind of create evidence when you really need it to, or you can be selective about which bits of evidence research we're going to use, because basically all research is based on evidence. So that kind of phrasing means very little.
Dr. Roy, can I just, for those who aren't in the space, I think when we hear about evidence-based practice, it's usually referring to evidence-based teaching methods. Is that what we're talking about there?
That is what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And listen, phonics, for instance, great evidence about how phonics is supporting children's development. However, there's also evidence that we need more than just phonics. So it's great when politicians talk about using evidence-based practice. I just hope they use a balance of evidence and don't just use limited forms, which they have been at times. Other little things is, well, when we're going to have tutoring, individual tutoring for kids, Where are we getting the staff from for that? When we're going to be improving the teacher retention and the training, that sounds great, but what is the detail behind that? How is that going to be applied? Does it mean that, say, teaching degrees will be paid for and therefore be made more attractive? So there's lots of little things I'd love to see how they're going to apply it.
I haven't seen the detail on that myself, but the government is saying this will improve teacher recruitment and retention, as you say. A fully funded system is, though, inherently more appealing to teachers, isn't it?
Obviously, a fully funded system, and it's a system that will keep getting more expensive and need additional funding. My great sadness, I think, is that 10-year rollout. It kind of means that the majority of children who are in schools right now will have finished schooling by the time this is fully rolled out. So I wish it could be instituted a bit quicker. When we have a little bit more focus on other areas of the economy, it seems to roll out faster. I also worry about them missing out some of the key areas that maybe would make a massive difference, such as the 5 years first that children have of being fed, of getting a good quality early education makes a massive difference. When we look at other countries, they have systems in place that we're not doing, such as not forcing so much assessment in the early years. So there's a whole pile of areas that we could be looking at. That funding is great. It's going to be a good thing. But I think there's other things we could be doing to actually change the system, not just fund the system we have already that isn't fully working.
The funding for those early years would go through a preschool system, though, isn't it? We have seen some investment in, heavily subsidised preschool, if not free preschool days, I think, aren't there?
Yes, but also there's little things that making sure kids are safe from poverty, safe from starvation, and are healthy. All these factors, if they also deal with them, that actually improves educational outcomes even more. So there's a whole part of societal change we need to make, and not just give funding into schools if we really want to raise the standards to those standards we see in Finland, that we see in China, that we're seeing in Singapore. So there's a whole pile of areas that we need to work on. But I must say, this is good news, even if it is kind of probably part of an election pledge.
Well, we've heard that the coalition will honour the commitment if it's elected to government. Does that help you?
Listen, that makes me, I'm always happy when politicians across parties are going to work together and agree together. I think our society works better that way. I just want to see that, make sure that the money is going to be used in the right areas to really fund the most vulnerable in our community, children with a disability, children from First Nation backgrounds, that we're really going to lift everyone's standards, and we will have a much more equitable system, which currently we don't quite have.
Well, I hope that we'll learn a bit more in the coming weeks and months about how this will make a difference for some of those groups, as you mentioned. Dr. Roy, thanks for your time this evening.
Thanks, Jen. Always a pleasure to talk.
Thank you. Dr. David Roy from the School of Education at the University of Newcastle. So it's a 10-year agreement, $4.8 billion in new funding, which the federal government says will restore faith in public education systems. We've seen that reporting around parents opting for private schools over public. So the funding comes with agreements from the states that they'll improve the way money is spent. So this is where things like the evidence-based teaching practice comes in that you heard Dr. Roy discussing. They're also talking about catch-up tutoring. Prue Carr also says things like early years numeracy checks, year one phonics, high quality professional learning for teachers. So I imagine we will learn more about how quickly that will be felt in schools, particularly too as we're hearing it will kind of gradually kick in from 2026 through to 2034. More detail to come on that. But broadly speaking, having been welcomed today by a range of groups and Dr. David Roy being one of those people welcoming it, but looking ahead for more information.